She is the executive director of Kids Chance of America, and she knows about fundraising. So she has some words of wisdom to share with you as you plan your year-end giving. And I am going to turn it over to Vicki.
Thank you, Barbara. Hi, everybody. I agree with Barbara. If you've got any questions or comments or things that you want to bring to the full group or have me answer or address, please just put them in the box. Either Trina or Barbara will interrupt and let us know what's happening there. I hope you're all having a great Tuesday. I know this was sort of pitched a little bit as great fundraising ideas, and we're going to sprinkle in a lot of great fundraising ideas, hopefully, to this webinar. But what I really focused on a little bit more this time around was, are you ready for end of year giving? And what does that exactly mean? We talk about it a lot, Q4, October, November, December being the best time of year to raise funds. And it really is. I've been doing it for about 40 years, and I will tell you, it's an opportunity that you don't want to miss. Statistics tell the story, really, when you look at end of year giving. 30% of the donations happen in December. If you think about, your revenue stream, thinking about 30% of that being able to fall into December. 28% of nonprofits raise up to a half of their annual donations in year-end campaigns. Their focus. They raise, 100,000 through the year. 50,000 of that may come in end-of-year giving campaigns. And in the last 3 days of December, you can get 10 or 12% of your donations, depending upon the kind of nonprofit you are. 59% of online donors make their gifts after watching a video. And of course, a lot of the marketing and videos is increased as we move towards the end of the year. We've all heard of the rise of Giving Tuesday and everything that I think we're doing in the nonprofit arena to really keep pressing forward the idea that if you really want to make an impact in your giving program, you really want to make sure that your end of giving year campaign is one of the most important fundraising initiatives that you actually do. The push can be the last chance in the year to connect with supporters and get some of those vital dollars. I've put a blog article that I wrote recently about end of year giving in the resource section of this deck, and I'll point that out as we move on. But there's a lot of really compelling evidence that this is a time that you really need to concentrate on when it comes to fundraising. Why do people give at the end of the year? I think, there are numerous reasons for that. Some people look at it as a tax benefit, and depending upon the type of gift they're making, it may have great benefits to their tax portfolio. Others, I think, just roll into the season of giving and are very happy to make yet another gift on someone's behalf. I think some just simply wait because they run out of time, and that's when they write checks. It can be really attributed to sheer habit in some cases, but for whatever reason, it pays for nonprofits to be prepared to take advantage of what I consider to be the best time of year for giving. So the question I ask everyone is, are you prepared? Do you have your plan in place? So I'm going to start today's webinar and just sort of talk through the components of what I consider to be pre-end of year planning. I like to focus on this a little bit earlier than October, but I think there's certainly still time to prepare. It happens every year. You start to lay the groundwork for a really good year-end campaign, and you build upon that every year, tweaking and modifying things so that it works better for you every year. But here are several things that I think all nonprofit organizations need to consider when they're preparing for end of year giving. One is to review last year's campaign. And if you didn't have one, that'll be a really quick bullet to get through, and you can move right into setting goals and benchmarks, which not for the whole year, but just for your end of giving year program. What's your goal? What do you want to raise in that quarter? Develop your playbook or your plan. Prepare your team so that everybody is practiced and ready to go. Get your tools ready. Manage your audience, and I think this is a big one when it comes to end of year giving. Choose or close well, and sometimes that close takes a number of tries. And then, of course, as you've all heard me talk about, thanks 7 times. So review last year's campaign. Before you start working on this year, 2021, review whatever you did or what your efforts were for 2020. This can often be, I think, one of the most important steps to planning your campaign. What you learn what works, you've seen what doesn't work, you try to add measurable outcomes that will guide the organization and really sort of lay out to you what you need to do, what you need in volunteer support, what you need in solicitors, and what you need with tools. We always want to maximize what worked, minimize what doesn't. So I always tell people, ask yourself some questions. How did last year's campaign go? You know, were you successful? How much was raised? Who contributed? Did you see new donors? Were these, you know, responding donors from other campaigns? Was this above or below the goal that you had looked at? What went really well? What didn't go quite as well? And why? You know, analyzing a little bit what worked and what didn't. Which strategies and tactics did your supporters respond to? And I think this is a big question that we often overlook when we're reviewing programs. You really want to look at what your donors or your potential donors respond to the best. It was also, I think, really helpful to review how 2020 funds helped further your mission. How did you use those funds? If nothing more, going back and evaluating how those funds really made a difference in your program will provide content for your messaging in 2021. So donors want to know, and I think it's extremely important, especially in the emotional pitch of messaging, to let them know that they actually made an impact and where that value add is. Involve your fundraising team in this review. Everybody's perspective, I think, is important. Even put your board into this conversation. Brainstorm how you want to approach the year, what you want to overcome in challenges, and I think you've got a really good foundation to move forward. Then, as number 2, set some specific incremental goals and attach benchmarks to it so you can sort of monitor how you're going through. Having a goal to reach also creates a sense of urgency. So it's an end of year goal that can be integrated into your messaging. Help us reach our, end of year goal of $50,000 this year, or we're $10,000 shy of our goal this year. Please make a gift and put us over the line. I think of it a lot like football. Those of you who know me know I'm a very big football fan. You're sort of on the edge of your seat watching your team work their way down the field. So, from January down to October, you're moving down that field 10 yards at a time, you reach the red zone. So now we're in what we could consider to be the red zone. You want all the cheering to intensify as you move that ball, over the goal line. You want to bring the fans along with you. You want to bring your donors to sort of a feverish pitch as you're working through this, and then you're going to yell touchdown when you reach your goal. You can apply a lot of that to an end of giving year campaign. It is prescriptive, it is planned, it is decisive. You've got a really tight schedule because you're really, in most cases, kicking off end of October, beginning of November, which gives you a short period of time to accomplish a lot. When you're looking at goals and benchmarks, you probably want to factor in your budget. How has your fiscal situation changed since last year? How close are you to reaching your financial goals for this year so that you're meeting your budget, understand where you are and help set what I call realistic but inspiring goals for end of year giving. You want to reach a little bit, but you want to be realistic about that reach. I've often dealt with groups that just have no reality around where they really can end up in an end of year campaign. I recommend SMART goals. I know, anybody in the field, workers' comp field or professional, has dealt with SMART goals before. Be specific. This is an end of year giving campaign. Do you want to raise $10,000 by the end of the year? Do you want to raise $5,000? What is your nut? And be specific about it. Make sure that your goals are very measurable and quantifiable so that you can sort of watch those and monitor those, the old thermometer kind of concept. Attainable. And this is where we get into the ambitious, but within the realm of possibilities. If you raised, $100,000 in total last fiscal year, saying you're going to raise $1 million in your end of giving campaign is probably a little unrealistic, unless you have $1 million donor, in which case more power to you. It's sometimes in football terms the Hail Marys that I try to guide people away from. Make it realistic. Give it a little bit of a reach. Give your board and your fundraising committee a challenge, but keep it within the realms of what really can work. And make it relevant. This is a time more than any other time to really be linking your campaign with your mission and the vision of your organization, and pulling out those emotional pieces that I think people really respond to. And then have a deadline. And of course, end of year has a deadline. December 31st is the deadline. So you're really compartmentalizing this campaign with a start and a finish. And I think in fundraising, sometimes it's great to have a start and a finish. Develop your playbook. Along with setting goals, I think having that well-developed plan will keep you on track. And as I said before, by rights, you may want to start thinking about this July and August. Of course, none of us are thinking about this in July and August, but at least by September, starting to prepare where your end of giving campaign is going to fit in. So it's still plenty of time. We're talking about a lot of these things at the national level, so I don't want to give you the impression that we're way ahead of the game either. But, by the end of this month, we want to start to look at that timeline and know that we've got clear goals, that we're looking to segment our audience, probably crafting a lot of the right outreach messages, creating a schedule for communications and solicitations so that we know what is going to happen when. We're implementing the plan as we go along. We're preparing ahead of time as to how we're going to acknowledge and recognize these donors, because they're going to come in a period of 8 to 10 weeks. And we really want to make sure that this plan is in writing. We take a look at it, we review it, we revisit it with the fundraising team and the board. And then we prepare the team. So back to my football analogy, you need to recruit a strong team. You need to determine how many people you need, what they'll be working on in the end of giving campaign, what are their main responsibilities? Do you have a quarterback? Do you have a fundraising chair? Is there a leader who's going to take on the responsibilities of sort of pulling all these things together? How can your board help? How do you involve other extraneous volunteers in all this? This is your team. And once you've got this team, or the committee, if you will, make sure they're prepared to participate in a meaningful way. I find that in many cases, especially on fundraising committees, it's not that people aren't well-meaning and they don't have a strong intent to help. In some cases, they just don't know exactly what to do. So you need to make sure that people are prepared, especially for direct solicitations. The fact is, If they're not comfortable asking for money, they will most likely not be successful in getting it. So you want to make sure that everybody is in the right position. You know, your running back, your wide receiver, your tackle. You don't necessarily want the tackle being the wide receiver. Like, you don't want somebody soliciting who maybe should be doing some of the back end work, or pulling together your messaging, or laying out your social media campaign. Make sure you add some training to all of this. There's certainly lots of resources available online about, you know, how to prepare volunteers for fundraising positions. I know, you know, Barbara and I would certainly be happy to talk to anybody about some of what we think is important to share with volunteers before they move out there. But most importantly, I think you need to have the tools available for all of your volunteers to use. So that brings me to number 5 on my list, which is getting your tools ready, making sure they're up to date and on point for your end of year campaign. When I talk about fundraising tools, I'm talking about things like your website. This is a good time to go through, make sure your website is updated, edited, engaging. All of the most pertinent information is included. There are results from any of your summer and early fall programs. Make sure your donation page is easy to find. In fact, consider placing a message on your homepage that links people directly to the donation page. Make it as easy as possible to find where they can make a gift. Look at your online donation system. Make sure your donation system is in tip-top shape and test it. And I say this regularly. Test your systems regularly so that you know it's working the way that it should. With online giving increasing every year, the website will, I think, be the place where many donors will seek out, you know, your organization to make their gifts. Your website and your donation page need to be fast, responsive, trustworthy, and back to my issue about testing, it needs to work. So this is a good time to go in and test that, especially if you're going to increase your outreach and your, you know, directing through links in communications people to your website to make gifts. Make sure you've got a good address and make sure that it is prominently displayed. Just because online giving is increasing does not mean that everybody wants to make their gift online. Make sure that people know how to make out their check, where their check needs to be sent, so that that's easily found. Brush up on your matching gift knowledge. Know who's in your donor pool who may be working in a matching gift company so that you can double those dollars by following up with that donor and encouraging them to complete a matching gift form. Be sure your team has matching gift information. So anybody who is out there working with dollars, it is a very compelling argument to a potential donor to say, you realize because you're working at Safety National, your dollars will be doubled if you make a charitable gift. So it's a great way to increase dollars without having to increase the number of solicitations you actually have to make. Shore up your social media channels. Make sure you're promoting end of year giving with links back to your donation page. Make sure that they're, you know, you're making noise where people will see it. It's a great reminder to people as you're going through the next couple of months. Enhance your messaging, especially, and I've been saying this a lot to folks, with visual content. Visual content, photos, videos, etc., seem to be really picking up the pace with donors, much more effective than just text, especially at pulling at the heartstrings. So anywhere, whether it's in a solicitation, an emailed solicitation, e-blast on your website, or even a link from your social media channels, anywhere you can use a photo or a video, you're going to see, I think, more effective results. If you haven't explored them and it's time, give a thought to giving levels. If you don't have them, it's not, you don't have to have them. But I also say that, especially when asking for larger gifts or trying to engage recurring donors or donor renewals, being able to suggest that they move to the next level, or as I say, suggest that they join the championship level versus make $1,000 gift, is sometimes easier to do. And people, especially donors, like to be part of something. So having donor levels or donor clubs sometimes can, subtly move people to a different level of giving simply because they want to be part of that club. I think it's especially helpful for repeat gifts. I think it's especially helpful when you're trying to increase the giving level of some of your current donors. Again, not necessary, but a helpful tool, especially for your fundraisers and your solicitors. Have materials, electronic and perhaps even printed, available and ready to go for your fundraising campaign. So your team is always well armed with materials to send out. And I'm sure there's more tools to look at, but I think having that arsenal of resources available to your fundraising team will make a huge difference as you roll out the end of year campaign. Manage your audience. I think another key point, especially in end of year giving, is to really take a look at your audience and how to best approach them. Keep it donor centric. And that's to say, end of year giving is not as much about your financial struggles as it is about the donor's ability to make impact. And in your messaging, outline how that donor can make a valuable impact to your organization and ultimately your mission. Keep it human. You've heard people say this before. I say it all the time. People give to people, not necessarily organizations. Focus as much of your ask in a direct one-to-one, peer-to-peer, and deliver it in person if you can and have the opportunity to do that. Use the power of storytelling. Again, along with strong visuals, what we're seeing in the field right now is the need to use storytelling. It evokes emotions, it inspires actions, it makes potential donors feel like they're part of your story. Student testimonials, I think we've all found, are very, very powerful fundraising tools to use. Create donor segments. Audience segmentation basically means that you're dividing the donors into groups based on, certain behaviors or traits that they may have. Probably the most direct segmentation you would see would be something like current donors, lapsed donors, prospective donors. So those people who are currently on the donor rolls, may have even given you a gift already this year, would be in one group, and the messaging to them would be slightly different than the messaging to a lapsed donor, somebody as we call the lie bunts and sigh bunts, last year but not yet this year, or some years, but not yet this year. So they've been donors, they've been supporters, but have lapsed in some way, shape, or form. The message to them may be slightly different. Welcome, we need you back. Come back on board. We've missed your involvement, your participation, and most of all, your support. There's ways to sort of reach out to that audience. And then prospective donors, people who have not supported your organization in the past, but you want to. You can segment donors also on gift sizes. Certainly somebody who may be a $10,000 donor for you is going to get a little bit of a different outreach and messaging than your $25 donor. So look at what segmentation makes sense. Having said that, I will also tell you that I encourage people not to make it harder than it needs to be. I know some organizations that segment 15 different ways, shapes, forms, etc., so that sending out a simple appeal becomes a major initiative. Segment and target as appropriate for your organization. I don't know that one size fits all with a solicitation. I think at least you want to look at donors versus non-donors and size of gifts when you're making some of those decisions. And then close well. It doesn't stop when you make the ask. And I think this is especially important in end of year giving. After you send one year-end appeal, it's time then to start following up. One solicitation does not always do the trick. Donors need to be reminded, I think, throughout the campaign to donate. Include a call to action in every message you're sending out via your communications channels. So you may send a reminder as part of your newsletter. You may send a reminder as part of another message that you're emailing out. Pay attention to the frequencies, but typically, as a rule of thumb, we usually say it sometimes takes 5 touches to get the year-end gift closed. So thinking of 5 ways to emphasize, and you can send your initial appeal, you can use Giving Tuesday, you can do something around Awareness Week, you can certainly do a thank you around Thanksgiving. There's lots of ways to reinforce that ask, but I think you want to do your best to get it all out there in your initial appeal and then follow up until the gift is closed. You know your audience the best, so focus on the donor segments that are most likely to give. So you want to go for your low-hanging fruit in your best options, and start following up pretty quickly. So again, it's the beauty of having an end-of-year appeal that is only 8 to 10 weeks, because you have to do follow-up pretty regimented and pretty close together. But that's what you want to do. You don't want to appeal and then leave 4 or 5 weeks before someone hears from you again. Don't idle. A lot of donations will pour in at the end of the, really towards the end of the year, but they come because they've been constantly cultivated through all of it. And, when I do presentations on end of year giving, I really suggest to people that they do one thing. If you don't do anything else, please consider doing this. And it's one big sort of appeal going into the end of the year. Take all of your previous donors, and they don't have to be just from this year. They can be from the beginning of time, as long as you have a name and a good email address or mailing address if you're mailing them out. Send one appeal and make it a strong appeal, strong case for support by year end. Do this maybe the week following Thanksgiving. Everybody's coming back from the holiday. They're feeling thankful. They're feeling good. Send a second follow-up to those who don't respond to your first appeal. Mix it up a little bit. Use a strong testimonial, but make sure that goes out about the 15th of the month. And then finally, look at a third appeal. There's still time. You haven't missed your opportunity yet. We want to make sure that we have you among our donors around the 27th or 28th of December. It's the last chance. Send it to anyone you haven't heard from. If you do those 3 appeals, one the beginning of December after Thanksgiving, one mid-December, and one towards the end of December, I guarantee you will raise annual giving dollars. Use that as a base for starting your end of year appeal, and then build that out over the years so that it becomes stronger each year. Thanks 7 times. And I know you've all heard me talk about this because I'm a big one for thank yous and recognition, etc. But have your thank you materials ready to go before you start the campaign. Why? Because you're doing this in the middle of the holidays, etc., and you're all just as busy as the people that you're soliciting. Know that you've got, the wherewithal to think of 7 good ways to thank these donors as they're coming through. And I also want to just emphasize the fact that you shouldn't forget to thank your staff and your volunteers as well. We often overlook that, and we shouldn't. They really help to make everything happen, and we don't want to leave them out of the thank yous. End of year campaigning, especially because of the time of year, is labor intensive and sometimes stressful. You want to make that goal. You know there's a lot of urgency around it. So regardless of the results of your campaign, take some time to celebrate everyone's hard work and dedication. And I think those 8 steps will get you prepared and ready to kick off a good end of year campaign. I did a program last year, and I wanted to make sure that I incorporated this again into today's webinar. I know that we have all of this information available, and I'd be happy to make sure that it gets to all the participants. There's a large deck and I think some narrative around what we call the 12 days of giving. But I think these are all very viable programs and fundraising strategies to use at end of year. Challenge, gift, or grant is always great. If you've got a donor who's willing to make a gift, a larger gift, $10,000, $25,000, challenging the rest of your donor base and even some of your prospective donors to meet that challenge, match that gift, is a tremendously compelling exercise in solicitations. We talked a little bit about having your corporate matching gift programs ready to go, but I can't tell you how much money is left on the table by people who do not take advantage of corporate matching gifts. All they have to do is make their own gift to you and then fill out the paperwork in their corporate responsibility or financial office, and you will get a second check. In some cases, there are organizations out there that actually match 2 to 1. So something good to have. Host a thankathon. It's a great way to connect, the donor to the product. And if you can get some of your students or volunteers and board members just to do something, even, pre or post Thanksgiving holiday, that just thanks people for being generous and being donors and being part of your organization. I think that sets the stage for any kind of end of year appeal. Personal notes are great. If you have the opportunity, or you bring notes into a board meeting and have each of your board members write a couple of personal notes, just the act and the time spent to pen a note to a potential donor or one of your better donors speaks volumes to their value to your organization. I talked about the 5 outreach calls. It usually takes 5 contacts to bring a donation in. Don't be afraid to reach out. We talked about the traditional end of year appeal right after Thanksgiving, mid-December, right before the end of the year. Giving Tuesday this year is November 30th. It has become, I think, an international day of giving. It's recognized by most nonprofits. It's really a social media campaign. You can get it all set and ready to go well in advance. I know that we've got or have had in the past toolkits for Giving Tuesday if you need them. I would suggest you do something, even if it's posting in social media and providing a link to your donation page. Recognize Thanksgiving with a message, because after all, we're thanking people 7 times. Organize an online giving campaign. And again, before you do that, make sure that all of your online mechanics are working well. Board, friends, and family. I've always liked this one. It's a way to get your board more directly involved in soliciting new donors. At Kids Chance of America, Ken Martino calls it Board +2. So he makes sure that each of the board members makes their annual donation and also solicits 2 others on behalf of Kids Chance. host a virtual holiday gathering. I know everybody has all kinds of events going on, but sometimes just, a gathering of potential donors that, celebrates the season and gives you an opportunity to make a direct ask would be great. And of course, don't miss the reminders on December 29th. You'd be surprised how many people actually wait that long to make their gifts. So just to sort of wrap up, the year-end campaign is one of the most important initiatives a nonprofit will tackle in any given year. It requires planning, some hard work, and certainly commitment to keep up with the pace of an end-of-year campaign. But I think you'll find that ultimately, to be successful, you need to be organized, intentional, and prepared. And I hope some of the tips that we shared today will help you with your programs. And I hope that everyone will have at least some semblance of an end-of-year giving campaign. And I wish you a lot of luck.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki.
You're very welcome.
If anyone has questions, please type them into the chat box. Trina just dropped in these links that you can click on to go to some of these resources Vicki has included. I do want to say that we do have a little bit of a Giving Tuesday toolkit. It's actually within the Awareness Week toolkit. So if you go to our website, to the Awareness Week toolkit, which hopefully you've all been using, you can see at the very end of that, there's some tips and strategies for Giving Tuesday. Also, that on the matching gifts, I'm not sure, is there a link to a matching gift?
There is in the 12 days of giving narrative. So it should be in there. And if not, we can make that available.
I think that's what Trina added. And I know just while you were talking, I Googled matching gift companies in Massachusetts, and I got a whole list just for the state that I'm in. So, it does change. So you might want to give a Google to get the latest update. So any questions that anyone has? I know I have one for you, Vicki.
Okay.
I think a lot of our folks listening are looking at fundraising through the lens of events. And so they have event participants and they have sponsors. Do you recommend that they reach out to those folks in a year-end appeal, either by mail or email, or should they keep those for those events and sponsorships?
See, I think that's the beauty of a year-end campaign, because I think a year-end campaign really can be cumulative. And if it were me, I would be putting anybody who was supporting the organization in the current year and previous years into my end of year giving campaign. It's not about events. It's really about reaching out. It's about giving people an opportunity to make a valued impact on your organization. Certainly for people who are donors, you're going to recognize the fact that you appreciate their generosity through the year. But I think it's still certainly fair game to give everybody the opportunity to make a year-end gift by December 31st. And identify the fact that this is a special campaign with a special goal, and you're hoping that they will participate. The one thing that I have found over 40 years is when people are asked, they typically give. You don't want to ask somebody every month, but for a campaign like End of Giving, I would be surprised if you didn't have a few people who gave a second gift because they were asked.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions. I do want to reiterate what Vicki said, to make sure your donate button on your website is super easy to find, because that can be a real turnoff for a donor that they can't find your donation button. Another simple thing to do, I know a lot of you have been talking to about Awareness Week, and we're using the Awareness Week signature this year just to try to make sure everybody that we're communicating with knows about Awareness Week. It's easy. We all have a million emails coming into our email boxes. So you might also consider that for year end, using an email signature that you share with your board members that says, hey, we're having a year end giving campaign, help support kids in our state, and then link to your donate page. That's just another easy way that you can involve board members. Some board members may not, like, they may not feel comfortable asking people, but if you ask them to put a signature on their emails for a couple of weeks, that's an easier thing to do. So any other last remarks, Vicki?
Nope, just reach out if you have any questions, or if you need any help, or if you just want to run some things by me. I'm more than happy to look at what you have planned and lend a hand if you need it.
Great, and that goes for me as well. I do want to tell you all that this webinar will be posted to our YouTube channel. We've had a little change in how we're sharing those with you. So there is a link on the navigation of the website under media that will take you to our YouTube channel. So you can go directly to the YouTube channel to check out any of the webinars, and we will be sending you a survey. We'd love your feedback. I'm actually working on the next 6 or 7 of these webinars, and I would truly love to hear what you would like to see webinars about. So let us have your thoughts and ideas. The next webinar is November 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Kim Staliza, who's our scholarship lady. And there's a lot of things going on in the world of scholarships and students and financial aid. So you'll want to be sure that your key people and scholarship coordinators are attending that. So that is all we have. Thank you all so much for attending.
Thanks,
We really
everybody.
appreciate your time, and thanks for all you do for Kids Chance, everyone. Take care.